This next Devo in the Stars series is called We Are Among Them, and we're looking at Hebrews 11, which you all know is the faith chapter. And the first instance of faith mentioned is in verse 2, and it says, by faith we understand the universe is formed at God's command. So we've been talking now for weeks about the stars being called out and numbered and appearing every night under his command. It's a good place to begin with our faith. And then the writer lists all the stalwarts of faith by name and how they believed in God's words and obeyed, including Abraham, Noah, Sarah, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and Rahab. And in the middle of naming all those people lies the verses again that we started with when we started on the Devo with the stars. So from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and countless as the sand on the seashore, again referring to Abraham. We're reminded that he was as good as dead. Remember how old he was when the promised son was born? Way past the prime of childbearing years. In fact, every one of the people mentioned in this Hall of Fame list experienced impossible tasks and situations. Noah built an ark and went inside during a long flood. But remember the olive leaf? Faith sustained him. Joseph was sold into slavery, away from the home of his fathers. But the brothers that sold him eventually came and bowed before him. Moses was left in a basket in a river by a faithful mom that believed God would find a home for her boy. And God did, and that little boy became a great deliverer. Rahab was a prostitute, and her obedience was counted to her as faith as well. That list of people in Hebrews 11 is long, and I only mentioned a few, but they're among the descendants of Abraham, among those that are as numerous as the stars and countless as the sand. Then it goes on to say that all of those people were still living by faith when they died, and their faith was grounded in that initial statement at the beginning of the chapter that the universe was formed by God's command. Without that knowledge and wisdom that the God we love founded the earth, we'll flounder in our faith when hard times come. But when we stand on the foundation that God set the stars in the sky, counts them and names them, governs them and commands them, we see that faith begins to grow. So then we too can hear and obey his voice and be counted among the numerous descendants in the Hall of Fame of faith. It has nothing to do with our own strength or ability. It has everything to do with his voice and his love that endures and holds forever. Just like he holds the universe as it spins and it cycles and gives us seasons, night and day, sunrise and sunset, and oh yes, those twinkling stars. There are more people in this chapter, women that receive their dead back to life, moms of lost children having hope, others that were tortured for their faith, and some killed and stoned. In verse 38, it says the world was not worthy of them. They were among those that were counted for faith, and they were among the generations later, appearing again and again in birth and life, offering light just like the stars. So if right in the middle of this long list of the famous ones of the faith is the reminder about the stars again, it might do us well to remember that we're in that line, standing in line right beside those people we admire for their feats of faith. Life might have thrown us hardship in the way of ill health, huge disappointment, great loss, or hurt that runs so deep that we're sure we're headed for shipwreck. And then those shining stars stand behind us and remind us that there's hope, because they too suffered long and hard, but they felt the mercy and grace of God, and they remind us to keep the faith. Sometimes we feel alone in our hardship, unseen in the dark of night, and wonder if anyone cares or is acquainted with our plight. And then there's that verse that says we're among his descendants, among the stars, called out, named, and counted, and not one is missing, and we're reminded to keep the faith. We are among them. We fall into despair, having waited too long for a promise, having been cast aside maybe by family and friends, or required to do too many hard things, and we feel alone and afraid, finding it impossible to muster up even a grain of faith. And remember the verse again, Abraham was as good as dead, and yet the promise came. So we're reminded to keep the faith. We are among that long list of those that suffered and yet obeyed, those that wondered and yet kept their eyes tilted upward, those that grew weary and yet found strength, and those that were outcast but experienced acceptance. And we're all accounted for, named and cared for, so that not one hair on our heads is lost when we keep the faith among them.